Have you ever considered a scenario where a defensive economic move, one specifically designed really to save high-wage manufacturing jobs, instead ends up crippling a nation's ability to meet its own climate goals?
And not only that, but sparking something close to, well, an economic civil war between its major regions.
That's exactly the paradox we're looking into today.
Yeah, we were looking at a classic study, really, of unforeseen economic and political ripple effects. It centers on Canada's decision back in October 2024.
Right, the decision to impose that dramatic 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles.
Exactly. And the mandate from Ottawa seemed clear at the time: protect Canada's domestic auto industry.
Protected from what the government claimed were, massively subsidized, market-distorting Chinese imports.
And the goal was also safeguarding thousands of existing jobs and trying to foster domestic EV innovation.
So our mission today is really to analyze the brutal, complex economic fallout that pretty quickly turned this protectionist strategy into, well, a national crisis.
A crisis that tested Canada's economic sovereignty, its resilience, against not just one, but both of its massive trading partners. At the same time,
Quite the situation.
it became an instantaneous geopolitical tightrope walk, really. And our sources reveal just how precisely Beijing calculated its counterstrike.
Okay, let's unpack that opening move first. The initial justification for that 100% tariff.
It was based on a pretty firm premise, you could say. The idea that China's advantage in the EV market wasn't about superior technology or efficiency.
No, the belief was it was rooted entirely in massive state subsidies.
Right. And that without this huge barrier, Canadian factories would just be swiftly overwhelmed. No chance to really ramp up their own domestic production.
But then came the reaction.
Yeah. What stands out here is the strategic shock of the calculated counterattack from Beijing.
They didn't just retaliate broadly.
No, not across the manufacturing sector where, Canada might have expected it. Instead, they struck with surgical, devastating precision.
Right at Canada's economic heart, it seems.
Exactly. The agricultural sectors, specifically hitting the western prairie provinces, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta.
And the precision, as you say, was absolutely devastating to those communities, the counter tariffs.
Well, they included a full 100% duty on Canadian canola oil and flour.
100%, wow.
Yeah, and 75.8% on the raw canola seed itself, plus 25% on Canadian pork, fish, and seafood.
And just to underscore the economic weight here, China bought almost $5 billion CAD worth of canola in 2024 alone.
That's right. And that figure represented something like 67% of Canada's total canola seed exports.
So losing that market, it was like severing a major lifeline to the prairies.
Absolutely. It was the economic equivalent. And we can see the specific painful data showing the consequences.
Go on.
In Saskatchewan alone, exports to China just plummeted, down 76% by August 2025.
76%.
Yeah, dropping from about $400 million down to barely $96 million. And you have to think about the human cost across those rural communities. We are talking about farmers grappling with collapsing commodity prices, huge debt loads.
And local agricultural cooperatives just dissolving.
Exactly. These communities felt very strongly that their livelihoods were being explicitly sacrificed.
Sacrificed for the benefit of the industrial heartland, mainly Ontario.
Precisely. Meanwhile, the supposed beneficiary, the protected auto sector, it stalled almost immediately.
Stalled? How so?
The EV market just seized up in the months that followed. EV sales dropped a staggering 35% in June 2025 compared to the year before.
35% is huge in a growing market.
It is. And the total market share for electric vehicles fell dramatically, from 18% down to just 9%.
So the protection actually hurt EV adoption.
This is where we see the cruel paradox of the policy. The tariffs created this massive affordability gap.
Because the cheaper options disappeared.
Right. Consumers lost access to those highly affordable Chinese models, the ones priced around, say, $25,000, often with pretty competitive range.
And the local models.
Well, the North American-built models averaged around $55,000, nearly double the price point.
Ouch. That changes the calculation for a lot of buyers.
Completely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the measure meant to protect Canadian industry actually slowed down the national transition toward those 2035 climate goals.
Which had knock-on effects for provincial policies too, I imagine.
As a direct result, yeah. Provinces like Quebec and British Columbia, they were forced to suspend or postpone their critical EV incentive programs.
Why? Because the vehicles were suddenly too expensive.
That and the supply chain was just too volatile. The math didn't work anymore.
So the policy, intended maybe to foster national strength, national unity. Instead, it deeply polarized the country,
It created a situation that was immediately framed as fields against factories.
pitting the agricultural prairies against the industrial, auto-centric heartland of Ontario,
And the farmers mobilized across the West. They blocked major transportation routes.
demanding access to export markets, not just temporary government subsidies, right?
Their message was very succinct. They demanded buyers, not checks. They wanted their markets back.
That level of anger must have put immense pressure on Ottawa.
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating here is the resultant political shift in Ottawa. Under this immense, truly existential pressure, the federal government was forced into a painful reevaluation.
And wasn't there that incident with the Saskatchewan premier?
Ah, yes. We saw that incredible political tension when Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe traveled directly to Beijing to negotiate, completely bypassing federal authority.
That must have caused fireworks.
It did. The move was initially branded as, well, political treason by some federal critics, but later it was sort of tacitly praised.
Really? Why the change?
It signaled Ottawa's desperate need for any kind of resolution. It also highlighted a profound crack, really, in the constitutional relationship between the provinces and the federal government regarding foreign trade.
So this painful reconsideration,
Mm-hmm.
it eventually led somewhere.
It led to the current compromise option that's being heavily discussed, a partial reduction of that 100% EV tariff.
Just a straight reduction.
No, crucially, that relief would be specifically linked to a concrete strategic condition.
Okay, what's the condition?
It's ambitious, requiring Chinese automakers to commit to investing in and building new assembly plants in Canada.
Ah, so trying to get investment out of the deal.
Exactly. The proposal aims for a kind of balanced outcome, restoring the critical agricultural market for the prairies. That's number one.
And making EVs more accessible again.
Yes, making them more affordable for consumers by introducing local production from these new plants. And, of course, attracting significant new industrial investment and hopefully long-term jobs.
Which raises that big question.
Can a devastating trade crisis actually be converted into a necessary modern industrial strategy?
But let's push on that a bit. If China agrees to build assembly plants here, effectively replacing imported cars with cars made in new Canadian factories, aren't we just sort of accepting replacement subsidies under a different guise? Is Canada just inviting the Chinese state to apply its industrial policy here?
That is the core strategic risk, absolutely. Does it solve the underlying issue of economic sovereignty? Maybe not directly.
And doesn't linking our vital agricultural exports like canola directly to foreign auto investment create, I don't know, future leverage opportunities for Beijing?
It certainly could. That's the tightrope. But you have to remember, Canada was navigating this deep tension with China while simultaneously facing an aggressive front on its southern border.
Right. The U.S. situation flared up around the same time.
It did. In early 2025, the U.S. president imposed a crippling 35% tariff on nearly all Canadian exports.
And the justifications were quite something.
Aggressive is one word for it, accusing Ottawa of failing to curb the transit of fentanyl trafficking across the border.
And even referring to Canada, its largest trading partner, as the 51st state. That was quite inflammatory.
Extremely. And that moment really highlighted the fundamental difference between the two trade conflicts, didn't it?
How so?
Well, China used a surgically precise economic weapon, the agricultural tariffs, to retaliate against a clear economic action, the EV tariff.
Whereas the U.S. action.
The U.S. used a broad, blunt economic assault. The 35% across-the-board tariff, justified by non-economic political narratives, like the fentanyl claim, to achieve leverage.
It's a very different dynamic.
Completely different. And we need to analyze the immediate fallout of those sweeping U.S. tariffs, too, particularly the counterintuitive damage to the U.S. economy itself.
Damage to the U.S.? How?
Well, think about Canadian tourism. It's the largest single source of foreign visitors to the United States.
Right. It's a massive sector.
Huge.
Yeah.
Generates over $20 billion, supports maybe 100,000 U.S. jobs, hotels, restaurants, retail.
So what happened?
Immediately following the U.S. tariffs, that tourism market crashed by a third.
A third, just like that.
We saw a 34% drop in border crossings and flights almost overnight, so the punitive gesture ended up punishing U.S. hotels, U.S. restaurants, U.S. small businesses that rely heavily on Canadian visitors. A classic own goal in some ways.
So despite fighting these simultaneous trade wars with both China and the U.S., how did the Canadian economy actually hold up?
Surprisingly resilient on the macroeconomic front. The Canadian dollar remained relatively stable.
And other exports helped.
Yes, strategic diversification of energy exports, particularly shipping more to Europe, helped compensate for some of the losses suffered in the Asian agricultural market.
But the central dilemma remains stark, doesn't it?
It does. Can Canada maintain its economic sovereignty while navigating the need for, well, economic pragmatism and the desperate need for diversification away from such heavy reliance on these two gigantic and frankly volatile partners?
So, if we circle back to the start of our analysis,
hmm
the core lesson from the EV tariff seems painfully clear.
Yeah, the policy of protectionism, it bought time, but that time didn't really generate industrial progress, did it? It just escalated costs.
It stalled critical EV adoption, as we saw.
And drove Canadian farmers into crushing debt. Huge costs, tangible costs.
So the path forward, it demands a more intelligent, strategic approach.
Seems unavoidable. It means connecting any tariff relief directly with concrete, measurable strategic results.
Like restoring those canola exports is step one, presumably.
Absolutely. And attracting specific high-value auto investment, but in a way that respects Canadian sovereignty, not just import subsidies.
And looking beyond the U.S. and China.
Proactively forging new alliances, maybe with trusted partners like Japan or South Korea, to genuinely diversify supply chains, that seems essential long-term.
So the choice currently confronting Ottawa,
Uh,
it's a tough one.
It really is. Maintain that tariff rigidity and prolong the regional crisis between the prairies, Ontario.
Or embrace flexibility now, potentially linking tariff relief to investment, but risk maybe some short-term political backlash.
Exactly. And that choice will ultimately determine if this moment creates long-lasting, bitter regional divisions.
Or if it somehow catalyzes the necessary, bold, new industrial policy Canada really needs for the 21st century.
A defining moment, no question about it.